Well, our perspective this morning is coming from Edo State, where an APC member, Abdul Oyakire, is joining us virtually to have conversations on the matter. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Mr. Abdul.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me on your program.
Interesting. So, well, first of all, you know as well as everyone else that there have been concerns about the fact that the only party that wins elections at the various local government areas are always the same, the political parties. First of all, what's your assessment of that position? Is it a confirmation of the popularity of the party, or is it just the influence, what they call the incumbency factor, that is always playing up?
All right, thank you so much for that question. Good morning, Nigerians. Yes, it is seen as a pattern sometimes that the ruling party clears up local government elections, but that may not be entirely the fault of the ruling party, if you ask me, because the problem with opposition sometimes is they have this defeatist spirits they come into elections, and coupled with the fact that sometimes they've been in power, like in Edo State, and there is nothing really to show. Just like the by-elections we had in Edo State, at the Edo Central, we had the senatorial election, and then we had the Overa Federal Constituency elections. The margin of victory will tell you a lot about the work that is going on currently in the state. So it has nothing to do with the ruling party. The election was observed by international observers, by local observers. The media was present. And you could see that it was a queue. People queue up. Even the governor himself, His Excellency Senator Mondo Pewolo, queued up. When it was his turn, he voted, and the votes were counted. So it has nothing to do with which party is ruling. I think it has more to do with what the people are seeing on ground. And if you see the turnout, the victory at Edo Central is over 105,000. And that tells you clearly that there was a massive turnout in spite of it being a by-election. And then the running candidates for the election in the opposition party had barely about 15,000 to go with. So when you look at the trajectory of the election and the polls, it tells you that there is an acceptance of the ruling party. The governor has been in office barely around 8 months or thereabouts, but from what we are seeing on ground, we can tell you clearly that he's taking a cue from the governance of the federal government, His Excellency Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Would you also say, Mr. Yakiri, that it's the same scenario in states where the APC was not the ruling party, or rather is not the ruling party, yet the APC lost in those states? Are you saying, is it because the APC does not have structures? Is it because they are structurally weak in those states as well?
Yeah, governance is about being close to the people. You'll find out that sometimes at the federal level, there might be some little gap which the state governors exploit to become close to the people. So the people sometimes follow what they see. They judge based on what they can feel. So when you have state government, sometimes it has a way of winning the emotions of the people. And unfortunately, the Nigerian voter is one that is largely influenced by emotions rather than of policy, of direction, and of vision. So you find out that we tend to always want to judge by what we see, and that influences the polls sometimes. But in the case of Edo State particularly, it was as a result of what was on ground, or what is on ground, and it's still being developed. And the people saw it, and they came out in mass. One would have expected some form of voter apathy during the polls, but against that, you'll find that there was a large turnout of people coming out to vote. And the numbers will continue to grow as the polls continue to come.
Well, Mr. Yakiri, you also do remember, and this is something that you're not hearing for the first time, that one of the concerns so many people have expressed is that the polls usually come out that way simply because it is the state governments, federal, be it executive, legislature, or judiciary, it is the state government that funds the elections into local government administrations, and consequently, they have a way of ensuring that they get, ROI on their investments.
Yeah, sometimes people make these accusations, but they are largely unfounded because funds are bought. Sometimes the candidates are seen going to purchase their funds, the campaign. Yes, you can say the ruling government sometimes join in this campaign. moving from word to word. But that does not mean, I mean, it's going to be casting aspersions to say that sometimes finances are used to support these elections. These candidates float themselves. The governor of Edo State, for instance, he ran the election from an opposition party in the state, and he won the election. So if he could run from the opposition, you cannot say, therefore, that state funds are involved in these elections. I think the people are just comfortable with what they are seeing. It is an attestation of what is going on at the state level and at the federal level. Yes, we have not attained the perfection, yet, yes, El Dorado is still far from us, but definitely we are taking small steps, and these small steps are going to culminate into great results.
I'm pretty sure Marco will be taking you up on some of those issues later on, but let me take you on a second matter now about the administration of the president at the federal level. There are a number of concerns that you have heard that people have expressed as far as the federal government's influence or impact, the impact of the policies of government, the federal government on Nigerians are concerned. Which one of them have you had, and which one of them touches you the most? You want to say you don't agree with this one or you agree with this one? Which one of them? I have a list, but which one have you heard that you think concerns, that gives you the most concern? Perhaps because you think people misunderstand the initiatives of government, or you think, okay, maybe they have a case, but they just don't understand.
Yeah, thank you so much. You see, at the federal level, I think Nigerians and citizens need to understand that governance at the federal level is more about policy and direction rather than petty constructions and what have you here. A lot of times you'll find out that the government is making policies for the future of the country. Let's take, for instance, during the subsidy removal, there was so much pandemonium, so much forecast. World financial bodies were making forecasts that the Nigerian naira could collapse in so period, and it could take us about 10 years to recover. But today we are looking at it, and everyone is seeing the gains. The allocation, we just had Femi Falana, SAN, a statesman, speak about how the allocations from the federal government to the states and the units has now gone up to over 2 trillion naira from 650 billion it was before the subsidy removal. So I think, yes, the federal government has a role to play, but we must also hold the subnational units to account for what is going on in their states. The revenue has gone up in the states, and quite frankly, the naira has also been doing very well. When the naira was floated, removing the dichotomy between the black market and the official exchange rates, I was out of the country at the time, and within a short time of going out and coming back in 20 minutes, the naira had gone up from 430 naira to over 750 naira, just within 20 minutes. And it continued on that trajectory for a long time. But the economists in the countries kept telling us that, don't worry, this is going to stabilize. But there was panic, and it is natural with opposition to take advantage of these situations. But today now we have seen the naira taking stability, and world organizations like the World Trade Organizations and others are beginning to give credence to the Nigerian economy, that the economy has attained stability. Now, to say that an economy has attained stability may not be properly understood by non-economists. But if you meet an economist or someone who follows the financial system and it tells you what it means to say an economy has attained stability, then you know that it is now time for growth. So these are some of the policies that we are looking out for. Yes, there was also the issue of the removal of subsidy, and one of the pushing effect was the enhanced rolling out of the CNG gas. Now, so far there is a plan that by Q1 of 2026, over 500,000 cars will have been exported into the CNG program. But Nigerians need to understand, for those of us who may have forgotten, the 2008 crashing of the oil price met the country in a very big, gave the country a very big blow. Our reserves had depleted from $62 billion to just about $30 billion. So if we did not remove that subsidy, another downturn of oil prices would have seen that Nigeria would have been in an economic crisis. But today we get forecasts that the economy is doing well, and that even inflation rates came down. Last month it came to around 21%. While countries like Turkey in Europe and Asia are struggling with about something% of inflation rates. So I think the economic policies of the government is an evolving system. It is work in progress. And it is on us as citizens to be patriots to the country. You see, I listened to Julius Malema. You talked about the NBA conference. I took pains to listen to his entire speech. If there is any staunch critic you would know of the South African governments, it is Julius Malema. But when he wanted to speak to the MB at their conference, he did not criticize the country. He did not criticize the government. Rather, he spoke about issues, the issues, just like xenophobia, for instance, and he criticized those issues. So I think Nigerian critics need to learn to become more patriotic in their positions. Nigeria as a nation is for all of us. We must come together to support the president. He is doing a lot in so many aspects. Is it the healthcare sector? Recently, the social safety net for retirees who are earning low income have now been given free healthcare. A lot of programs in education. We have the NEL Fund program that is going to see over 1 million students have access to education, and then later they can pay back. So there is a lot going on with the government. But I think we should give credits to the government for what it has done so far, even though there is a lot still being expected from the government. The government is on, it's just about 2 years, and it still has a lot.
Just 1 second, Mr. Yakire, if you can hear me. Perhaps the issue is not whether or not the president is doing anything. Perhaps the challenge is no one is communicating with the people. Throwing out data of what is being done is one thing. Being trusted that your data is true, is impactful, is another thing altogether. I had a conversation with Mr. Babatunde Fashola some weeks ago. One of the things he said was that, look, it's an open secret that governments do not communicate. It sounds to me, I mean, it's not a vindication that he said, it's just saying that that's a challenge. The executive head of any organization or of any agency can be doing all the wonderful work, but there is supposed to be a system to ensure that people have a buy-in into whatever the government is doing. But we're not seeing it in this government. The last time I recall any government communicated with the people was the Babangida government of the 80s into the 90s. These days, we don't have communication. People literally have to glean information, even at the state levels as well. People don't communicate with the people. So how can people trust that any government, even the federal government, is doing anything when all they see are just figures? No one is communicating with them.
Thank you so much for that question. You see, communication is in at least two fronts. Firstly, is the verbal communication, and then second, it's the action communication. Everyone would attest to the fact that the price of commodity, let's pick rice for instance, at some point in this country, the bag of rice was selling for over 100,000, 110,000, for instance, in Benin City. But today, that same rice that was selling for over 100,000 is now selling for 60-something thousand. That is one of the most effective ways of control. Yes, security is a challenge today, but you will agree with me that it's no longer as bad as it was before. That is communication. I think maybe what you want to say is the government is not spending state funds publicizing what it is doing, in which case it will not be in the interest of the people. The information is out there. It just takes the interest. And this, again, goes to the problem of patriotism we talked about. You see, bad news or negative information easily spread. You'll find that if you check an average Nigerian blogger's page, check this page, go through maybe 50 posts, 100 posts. The posts that are about Nigeria are mostly negative. So when the positives come out, you don't find people promoting them. And it is easy to be an opposition, to be honest with you. It is easy to find people who tell you I'm an opposition, because as an opposition, it's easier for you to just speak with reflex action without careful reflection and thoughtfulness. You say a bit on the social media and then you get off it. But to speak on behalf of the government, sometimes you require the facts and the data. And that is why we always implore Nigerians that do not always spread the negatives about the country. Sometimes go out for the positive. The president is doing a lot. Sometimes you find him traveling to big countries like the United States or going to small sovereigns like St. Lucia. All of this is to build the international image of the country. And while the president is making that effort, you find out that Nigerians are not so patriotic enough. The first thing you will meet in Nigeria, I have traveled to several countries, and most of those countries, when you meet Nigeria and you ask them, how is Nigeria? The first thing they tell you are the negatives. Every country has a negative. I cannot remember a country I have gone to that do not have potholes. I cannot remember a country I have gone to that do not have political issues. But the problem we have in Nigeria is when it is time to build, just like now, the elections are still far away. It is time to build, but you find out that we continue to bask in the euphoria of political discussion, politicking, and so we spend the entire time talking about politics and the intrigues of politics, when we should spend that time in construction.
Most times some people will say that perhaps we should put that, Mr. Ayakire, if you can hear me, some people will say perhaps we should put that squarely at the feet of politicians who spend all of the time and who spend a huge time politicking, even right after the election. Take, for instance, the president. If you come here to Abuja, it will surprise you how many billboards you will see of the president and of people who are asking people to vote for the president or who to sign up to volunteer for the next elections, which are at least 2 years away. And some people say, oh, well, that is how politics is run. The moment one election is done, the next election, preparations for the next election cycle has already begun. So some people will say, shouldn't we put that squarely at the foot of politicians, the political class, especially the leadership? We ought to, show better leadership in this direction.
Yes, thank you so much. You see, there is something about the human nature. Action gives rise to reactions. When you take an action, people are prompted to react. I'm sure the president probably at this moment wouldn't want to be discussing about election issues or election matters. And that is why he hasn't really come out to say anything clearly about it. But it's the lieutenants around that are making the comments. And that is because some of these politicians, just because probably they are out of government or they do not seem to have certain benefits they are looking up to, they suddenly decide to give an uprising and say, oh, we want a change, or we want this, we want that. I mean, a child is...
Mr. Ayakire, I'm not talking about those who are out of government. I'm not talking about... So sorry to interrupt you. I'm not talking about those who are out of government or those who are outside of the All Progressives Congress. These are clearly people who support the president, who have put his billboards in very strategic areas of the Federal Capital Territory, who have taken up the street light poles and put up billboards in support of the president. If the president doesn't want any of those things, doesn't he have a duty or responsibility to tell them that, look, guys, it's too early in the day?
Actions precedes reaction. Some of those things you see are reactionary measures that are coming as a result of certain actions that some politicians are taking in certain quarters. So it is always imperative that when actions are taken, those actions are marked with equal reaction. So some of those things are reactionary measures as a result of the hitting of the policy that you find that most politicians are beginning to engage in while the polls are still very far.
Well, you were speaking of the economy and you were talking about how the economy has stabilized, etc. I know some people will say, yes, indeed, this is true. At the macro level, we're seeing quite a bit of stabilization, and this has been attested to by many institutions, even outside of Nigeria. However, there is still very deep concern, very grave concern about the poor. Many people are still finding it very difficult to earn enough to maintain a decent standard of living. The 70,000 naira minimum wage, a lot of states are still struggling to be able to meet this new minimum wage. A lot of people in the private sector as well are yet to meet up with this new minimum wage as a result of the fact that the earning capacity of the economy and of many an enterprise is yet to be able to accommodate this earning capacity sufficient enough to be able to meet these obligations. So what would you be saying to government at this time to make it easier for people to be able to feel the trickle-down effect of this stabilization which we're seeing at the macro level?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think I like the word you used, talking about yet, that their income is yet to meet up with the demands of the economy. Policies do not just manifest overnight. These policies take time. Let's take the case of Singapore, for instance. When Lee Kuan Yew was transforming the country, it took him a long time. And today they are now one of the first world countries, moving from the third world countries. They paid the price, and that price was the price of patience and understanding with the government. I think the problem Nigerians have is not that they do not believe in the policies of the government. The problem sometimes is they do not know if the government is being sincere. And from the move the government has made so far, we see a lot of sincerity. I mean, programs like NENFOD, these programs are not for the rich or the well-to-do in the society. They are for the common man. Giving loan to people to go to school. When you graduate, you are working, you can repay back the loan. In fact, you can never actually really repay back that loan. You know why? You are giving it out at a particular point where the value of that money is X. And by the time you are paying it back, the value may have moved to Y, but you're still going to pay back in the value of X. So these are ways of giving back to the common man to ensure that the common man is carried along in the society.
I want to ask you something, because sorry to interrupt you once more. I hear you say the problem with Nigerians, or the problem with your fellow country people, and sometimes I'm asking myself, are you blaming them? If people are doubtful of government, if you sense that your fellow country people are not as patriotic as you would have them be, are you really blaming them for that? Or would you say that this is as a result of things that they have experienced in the past, the many disappointments that they felt, and the current reality of their own situations?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think the issue of Nigerians and how they feel about the country, it's not a problem that started today. It is an antecedent, just like you said, of things that have happened with previous administrations. But what we are saying here is, let us give the government the benefit of doubt at this point. Let us begin to believe once again in the future of Nigeria. Let us begin to tell ourselves that Nigeria can be better. The idea of being pessimistic in approaching issues has done more damage to the country than we can ever imagine. If we must have Nigeria get to where we want it to be, it is not the job of the president alone. It is not the job of those in government alone. We ourselves out of government, everybody, the media has a role to play. You see, the media too should become more patriotic in the programs and activities that it promotes. The citizens should become more patriotic when they speak about their country, Nigeria. And the government, of course, is already doing that marketing. So if we all come together, you see, change is a tripartite aspect. It concerns the government, it concerns the people, that's the individuals, and then it concerns the institutions. So we cannot expect to see that Nigeria will grow by just the job the president is doing. We as citizens too must come together to see how we can have these things achieved and attain this enviable level.
Well, some people will say that patriotism is easy to preach on a full stomach. For a number of people, the taste of the pudding that the APC is serving will be in the eating. We have to thank you very much for coming on the program this morning, Mr. Abdul Oyakire, who is a member of the All Progressives Congress and has joined us virtually from Edo State. Thank you once more for being a part of the program.
Thank you so much for having me.